Welcome to the Rebuild Procurement Podcast, the number one procurement podcast in the world, where we dive deep into topics to keep procurement people up to date and ahead of their peers. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're getting this, whether you like this or not. Today, I'm doing this one solo dolo. And what what I'm going to go through is thinking like a CFO. So a lot of procurement organizations and sourcing organizations, they either roll up through the CFO or your COO. In some cases, one reports to the other as well. And going to be putting ourselves in the mind of our CFO. I'm Tom Finn, bringing 15 years on the client side, procurement, finance, and category management experience in large and small cap orgs. And let's get into this. So, from a positioning standpoint, the best way I view as starting to work with leadership, new leadership, higher level leadership is just understanding expectations. So you can kind of categorize CFOs into a certain bucket. I'd put that bucket into they want to increase sales, they want to lower costs, and they want to be precise. So for public CFOs, they have responsibility, they have a liability if they do things wrong. So they're very process oriented, but they also want to just understand how to grow the business. They're measured on that, and also increase their EBITDA or net income, or just essentially the money they make. That's what they want to increase generally year over year. There's some nuance there, but that's essentially what that's kind of with the mindset of our CFO. So also, those folks get into positions because of reasons. Generally, they would have worked harder than their peers. They had some outlier ability that put them in that role that essentially is responsible for all the money in and out of an organization. So they've just done things. They've probably worked harder, and they have that expectation of the people that work for them. This is always a good mindset to kind of place yourself in that person that you're trying to support or to get in front of. So when it comes to procurement, I've been in both sourcing and procurement, as well as finance. So I've seen both sides, and there's a lot of value in understanding the finance aspect for procurement people. It allows you to speak more robustly about the things you're doing, as well as exactly, and also in the terms that your CFO would care about, right? They want to, again, will this help me increase sales? Will this help me reduce my costs? Or something else that I care about? So the idea for procurement is to take it from a cost center, right? We kind of cover ourselves with savings, more or less, to some version of this value engine, this value, maybe a rocket ship that could take off that they can watch and appreciate. So as a CFO, they don't want to necessarily just save money. I mean, they do, but they want certain levers that can improve the overall health, or even strategic positioning if they can, if there's those opportunities in there. And procurement folks are at the front line of that. So I have four items here, and I'm going to walk through them. The first is speak that language of finance. And what do I mean by that? They're procurement people, if they're talking amongst themselves, it might be, I saved $1 million, saved $100K here, $2 million there on software licensing, maintenance costs, whatever that is, manufacturing raw materials. Saved $1 million. Great. Okay. What's happened over time is there's been a lot of promises and then not necessarily deliveries. So you can work with the finance team, and you should work with the finance team and operations to actually speak that CFO language, where something like we reduced the annual OPEX, the operating expenses, by that $1 million. It shows that you're working together with your finance partners and there's cohesion amongst you, that then they can also hopefully see on their bottom line. And if not, maybe costs are increasing somewhere else that needs to be mitigated or worked through. It allows that conversation, that speak with finance, and it's not just like a validation. You actually want to see, you actually want to understand how it's going to roll through and make sure it does, license counts, things of that nature. So not only thinking about how you can speak to the CFO. What could be more important is acting like a CFO within your own role. So there's certain metrics that maybe in a future episode we can go through. We can walk through an income statement and essentially maybe like a 10K, which is the financials for a public company. But things like EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. There's a lot there, but it's kind of like the money that you make. But it's like the higher level money that you make with adding some stuff back in. Operating margin, working capital is one that folks hopefully know. When you extend your payment terms, you can extend your working capital. CapEx, which is treated differently than, so capital expenditures treated differently than OpEx, operational expenditures. Your free cash flow and ROI, which most people are aware of. But each of these things, EBITDA, operating margin, working capital, CapEx, OpEx, free cash flow, and ROI can be put to the side a little bit. They mean something different at different points within a company's journey. So understanding which ones are the most important at the time, it may be free cash flow. It may be needing money in the bank. It may be maybe you're going to need to spend more money because your company is looking to make net income zero, which is a strategy that then you pay less taxes. So there's certain things, and that would generally depend on how the year's going, that decisions might be made. So there's just these aspects that you want to understand for your company, right? It's a good thing to understand it for other companies and suppliers you're working with, but you really need to know the ins and outs for your company. I remember when I started, I was in sourcing, and then I moved into FP&A, like the finance group, and something that I was just trying to learn, right? I had went back to school, understood finance pretty well, but hadn't done it internal at a company. And to this day, I remember what the EBITDA margin, which was the most important number at the company for me at the time, it was 127.6, right? So to this day, you want those numbers ingrained. You want to know what your CFO cares about. Is it growth? Are you supporting sales, and it's growth in sales, sales revenues, and they need supporting staff for that, or a certain investment that you're helping support? Like, understand those things. It's good to understand things outside just what you're purchasing and supporting purchasing. Number 2, mastering cash flow and working capital. So cash is king for a CFO, period. End of stop. Cash is king. And a lot of times your CFO will be like, the reason you have to care about net payment terms is because they care about cash. If you're flush with cash, and then maybe you don't care as much about when you're paying, you can get better rates from your suppliers if you're going to pay quickly. If you're going to want to extend your payment terms and more or less extend that working capital, then with that, that's the other leverage point that you can understand. Is generally tough to get both, depending on where you're at in your journey. If you're newer to it, you can get both. You can extend payment terms and reduce costs. If you're a little further along, it's kind of a give or take. But the way that net payment terms should be viewed with that CFO hat on is a loan. So if it's going to be below net 30 or even below net 60, depending on your company, then you're giving a loan to your supplier. You're paying them early. If you're going to extend it out, you're taking a loan. So if you're going beyond that 30 days is kind of the standard payment terms. If you're going beyond that 30 days, then you're getting a loan. Now, if you can get a loan and also pay less, that's what you want. That's what your CFO wants. But those are the ways, and that's how a CFO and your finance team think about it. So payment terms is very important. There's also, like, if you may want some certain financing just within your supply chain, things can happen like that. And then if you're over inventory, it's a physical good. It's difficult to sell. Think like it could be difficult to sell. So if you buy $1 million worth of stuff and you plan on selling it for $2 million, that $1 million is locked up until it gets sold. So management of inventory is also something that can support. So to the extent that folks are locked in with their supply chain management. Number 3, a shift from cost savings to value creation, to enterprise value creation. So the this is kind of something that goes back, to the early 2000s, probably late 90s. Like, cost within procurement was king. I'm just going to reduce the cost. I'm going to look like the best in the world. Couldn't hit a better KPI. So that from a supplier standpoint, it was very focused on how can I reduce that down to minimal margin, minimal cost relative to other suppliers. So a way you may have positioned it before would be, if you bid something out, supplier A, B, C, supplier A, we got to go with them, right? They're 10%, 12%, 8% cheaper than supplier B. Okay, but what does that mean to me? There's the reverse, and you may want to go with that supplier A because they're 10% cheaper. But if supplier B is, relatively speaking, 10% more expensive, however, their technology, their workflow, their efficiency that they'll commit to is faster, and maybe that $1 million or that 10% can generate an incremental $5 million. Maybe there is something to that. Maybe turnaround time, if it's on a sales platform or something like that, that can support uptime. In manufacturing, companies will pay 2 times to have 99.99% uptime versus something that's going to be 80, right? You don't want something that's 80% that you need. It needs to be 100 and have that committed to. These commitments, they need to be locked in, but that's where your CFO is going to go into it, right? If there's one that'll commit to 80% uptime, the other is essentially 100% uptime, there is value within that 20%. And if 80 is okay, 80 is okay. But if it's a raw material supplier within manufacturing, you're going to want close to that 99.99, as well as them to cover the costs. So you may want to pay that additional. That supplier, to meet that 20% more, is also going to be paying an additional amount, whether it's equipment, expected support, insurance, things of that nature, to make sure you're good. So it is more about that, the old TCO, total cost of ownership, that really matters and needs to be factored in. Within that too, if you're making this switch, there's implementation costs, training, maintenance, things of that nature, the cost of just switching vendors, that 6 month, whatever it may be. So always want to be mindful of that and give the full picture. You don't want to be that procurement team that just shoves something down the team's, just forcing them to do what was needed because of this 10% reduction from supplier A to supplier B. You need to have clarity and need to have total visibility when it comes to making big decisions. And it also shows not only the effort of the team that's putting it in, but it shows the intellect too. Quantifying risks, again, that 99 versus 80, there's risk there. It may be for saleable product, right? If something's passing through, super important. There's also, it could be viewed for procurement as a growth enabler. Now, when that'd be when supporting certain orgs within the team. Sometimes not so much maybe on the OpEx side, whereas you could make the argument of being a proper partner with them, that within OpEx, say OpEx manufacturing, where my mind is, that having the ability to position things with them, it'll get you credibility with that OpEx team. When you're able to speak this finance language and explain things get lost in communication many times between maybe OpEx, procurement, finance. And finance is the one that has the wallet, has the purse, whatever you want to call it, that can pass that money back to the organization, and the positioning matters for that. But if you're supporting within, marketing, if they're winning a new tool and it's going to free up to do other things, being able to, again, to have that conversation, to explain the ROI, to negotiate the contract that aligns with what the business needs, that is valuable. That is valuable. And then number 4, and then after 4, I'm going to go into 5 ways to position your team. Number 4, providing predictability and foresight, and proactive foresight. So let's say the before. We're doing a little before and after here. So your CFO hates surprises, right? That's their credibility. If you are the CFO, you have to speak confidently because and you've confirmed, and your team's confirmed, that your numbers are right. The board, numbers are right. Investors, numbers are right. Goes back to that third piece that I was saying first when we kick this off. The certainty, the clarity, the process, that is part of what the CFO cares about. And accuracy within forecast matters. There's margins communicated to the street if you're a public company, still could be to investors from as a private company. But the old way, called the procurement mindset, will be reacting to supplier increases, market volatility. Oh, geez, what's going on here? You'd be surprised how much value gets put on certainty when it comes to the CFO. The CFO, if you were able to lock in a contract, I still remember the Southwest deal that got cut on. It was like during, I think it was pre-financial crisis, post-financial crisis. It was right around that time, and I could be getting a lot of these details wrong, but they speak to the point. For the longest time, we call it year, 2 years, maybe it was 12 months, 6 months. The Southwest was able to maintain their pricing because they had locked in a great deal on oil and essentially the gas for their airplanes. Now, even if it was a little bit more, but you could understand your pricing, there's hedging strategies that happen and you kind of take the licks, but you have certainty. Certainty is a very important piece. So providing that proactive intelligence that helps your CFO understand forecast, being more accurate, that's something that you at least want to have in front of them. You want to ensure that they know what's going on. So if something is 10% of your spend, you have to have ongoing market intelligence briefs. That'll go a long way. So if you're in the tech side, there's only so many categories that really matter. So things like cloud may matter, or data center builds, things of that nature, semiconductors, some contingent workforce. What are other companies doing? Reaching out to them. So providing that, if it's more manufacturing on like the logistics side, that may be a big piece. Raw materials. Secondly, here, building some version of a risk model for budget. So you want to understand what's going to be coming up in the next year. We're getting into planning cycle right now. Just hit September, so companies' budgets are going to start being set over the next 2 months. You want to understand what are the top 10, 20 categories, depending on your size, and explain that out. You want to get good at modeling. You can lead on your finance team. They'll help you out with this stuff as well. And you want to lock in costs that could be predictable. A version of that would be some version of a hedge strategy. You'll still want to run that by your CFO, if you're the CPO, or if you're a category manager, whomever it is. You want to make sure that those are understood, they'll be signed off on. But you want to provide that clarity. You're thinking about it, you're understanding it, and it shows that you're thinking like a CFO. Especially if you're able to de-risk, let's call it like this, de-risk the profit and loss statement, the P&L, and improve your forecasting accuracy. That's a big selling point to your finance team and your CFO. So let's do a little from to here. I have five from tos. So how to position your team for success. So the first one here, and we're going to kind of repeat what we went through, but first one here, taking the purchase price variance, right? As opposed to, okay, it's different than saving of 5%, 10%. Go back, EBITDA impact and margin improvement. To the extent that you can speak to those, for margin improvement, it may be on some of your larger contracts, but you want to frame the dollars that you saved as in dollar added. You want to work towards that. You could take a percentage of it as well. You can understand costs going up in the organization, but speak to your finance team and make sure that they are aligned. And with that alignment, it's not just the checkbox. I remember when it first started, like, you have to get things signed off by finance. It's not just a sign off. It's a partnership that you're working with them on. Number 2, going from getting the lowest price to improving working capital and free cash flow. So this could, again, be one way or the other. Net payment terms or a loan, one way or the other. You want to get both. You want a loan and you want lower costs. So If you're at net 30 across the board, a lot of companies move to net 60. If you're a big buyer, you can sometimes get them to net 90, but it is a loan. And where you're at in your journey as a procurement team, there's margin built in at first. If you're later stage, some more give take, but you have to frame it for the supplier as well. Speaking of suppliers, you're going to go from managing your suppliers to mitigating enterprise and financial risk. So with that, you want to present out supplier diversification. You want to understand the suppliers that are out there and the contracts, things like liability caps, again, the de-risking as tools to protect your revenue and any potential cost surprises that may happen. So the financial risk, a lot of times that some of that may happen within the legal terms, but there is positioning that needs to happen there. Hence, I mean, most legal teams are involved, but some of that legal side of stuff for the most important terms should be clear with your CFO. Number 4, going from the processing of requisitions to maximizing the return on investment, your ROI. So this is kind of like more acting as the internal consultant. I've always found being in procurement, being in sourcing, you sit in between a lot of teams, you have a lot of connection, a lot of contact. And with that, you can help your stakeholders work through their business cases. I mean, most folks have worked through scopes of work before, but on the investment side, the business cases, you're talking with finance now. You have that CFO cap on. You're able to use those total cost of ownership TCO models to prove the value or lack thereof for any recommended solution. So that's number 4. And number 5, you're going to go, this is what I think a lot of teams, not only procurement and sourcing, but a lot of teams do, is reacting to the business needs. Always responsive, always reactive. Going to providing predictable forecasts. So with that, you're going to know what contracts are expiring. You're going to know what industries there's volatility in. You're going to understand your categories, and you're going to make that clear. You're going to deliver proactive market intelligence that can help your CFO, first help you, and then you're communicating out to your CFO possible changes and maybe areas to lock in or to let ride. But you want to make sure that they feel like they're looped in so you can avoid issues to budget, like overruns, supply issues. You want to make sure specifically your CFO is locked in with you. So that is, after this, you should just go apply for CFO roles. I think that's what you should do right now. But my hope is from this is that you understand a little bit more about how to think from procurement with the finance lens on. It's how procurement and sourcing is already viewed. They're viewed as the column of the procurement jargon, right? The traditional procurement focus. You want that CFO aligned strategic focus. You want, when they think of sourcing and procurement, that they're on that CFO aligned strategic focus. They want to know that the team is lockstep with the finance team, working closely together. Your finance partner should be speaking well of you. You should be speaking well of your finance partners. Maybe there's a little back and forth, but that's okay. Also not a bad thing. But as long as folks are clear, understanding, and you're speaking the same that same jargon, that's where you want to get to. You want to speak that same jargon. You can go in ROI, EBITDA, blah, blah, blah. You kind of know where things are. That will add tremendous value to the conversations they're having and will create a big impact for your sourcing and procurement team. So that's that. I'm Tom Finn and appreciate you watching. Leave some comments. No one leaves comments. We need some comments, and we read every one and we'll comment back. Bye-bye.